Now, your most recent deal that you worked on is Eagle Ranch. So this one you just got into option in October, is that correct?
That was actually hasty. We went under
Oh,
option
I'm
at
sorry.
the year. This was just January of this year, so it's very fresh. This is actually land that I own again, and this is land that I've just been adding on to for a number of years. And I finally had an opportunity to purchase enough acreage that I thought it was worth looking into. Because Brooke and I had talked about this property like 2 years ago, but I only owned a couple of these parcels at that point. It wasn't this large. And I am just a very patient person. I started collecting these parcels back in 2006 was the first 40 acres and just grew it from there. So, because of the developer that I met through the Hasty project, they had a different approach to things, and they're, I would say, small to moderate size. And so they are always looking for different opportunities because they can't always outbid the big guys, and they know that. And so they work really hard to find unique approaches. And the land I own abuts the state section that's just north and a little bit east of it, right there. Can't miss the state section. So on the map to the right, the state section is
Yes.
a square. Yep. And so that transmission line goes through the state section, and everything in the blue that she has highlighted there is what I ended up putting under option. The parcel to the right of it in the yellow is actually in a subdivision. So we didn't put it under option because the subdivision zoning would not allow it. And the other parcels were just far enough away from the transmission that we decided not to try that up front. We're just going to stick with the parcels in the blue. But because it abuts a state section, it gave me a different opportunity. So it's just a little less than 300 acres that I own. And then the state section, obviously 640 acres. And so that allowed them an opportunity to put a project together that I wouldn't have been able to do if I wasn't abutting the state section. And that particular developer has a good rapport with the state of Colorado and has worked on state lands previously. So that really helped our cause. There is a queue available. There's space in that line that they can gain a queue for. And that's what she was most concerned about, was being able to get that queue. And they're working on getting that put together. And so that's why we put the option on this property. And I chose to go with a different developer because to Light Source BP, this isn't a big project that they're focused on. They like much larger scale projects. But for a moderate sized company or a smaller sized company, this is something they can dig into that other companies are kind of overlooking because it might be a touch more challenging. And the other reason I diversified and went with a different company, this one pays more than the one I originally went with. So for me, this is a little bit of a gamble and what I would call diversifying my portfolio. So instead of putting all my eggs in one basket with one developer, I decided to kind of step out and do something unusual with a developer who paid a little bit more. So what I'm earning here would be more money, but the likelihood of it going through probably less than my other property. But I'm perfectly okay with taking that gamble and trying to do it because I'm not intending to sell this anytime soon. And I'll gladly take those annual option payments while they're figuring out if they can put this together.
Absolutely. And one thing when we were discussing this property that I found fascinating is so normally when solar developers put out inquiries, they don't necessarily do as much diligence as what you were saying as this most recent company did about how much space is left in the transmission line or the interconnection queue before getting your property leased. I was really impressed to hear that because normally how it works is they'll put out offers in an area, like they'll put offers to everybody in this area, for instance, and they'll just see what they can get leased into option. And then they decide where things might go and how much capacity is left. So I thought that was really cool too, that they were willing to do that. Like I really thought you would go with the first company. I was very surprised when you told me you went with a new company, which is also another reason it's always important to get in front of as many buyers as you can. Because you never know what particular offer is going to be best. Just
Mhm.
because you've worked with the same buyer before, you still might want to put it out there and see who else will put an offer on it. And if their goals meet, align yours with that particular property at the end of the day.
Mhm. So the other thing I'm finding is that the larger scale developers seem to really be focused on that availability of the power pathways or the tri-corner connectors, the
Mhm.
really big projects. And so I think this is the opportunity for those smaller companies to step in and kind of make their little niche. And it was interesting on the Hasty property because it's not on any of the new lines, it's on an existing line.
Mhm.
And all the big companies that I had, gained relationships with through the Boone project, through you guys, most of them shook it off. They said, nope, not interested. No, thanks. Don't want to work on that. And so I really enjoy the enthusiasm of the smaller companies that aren't afraid to jump out there and do that due diligence in advance to see if they can make it work. So you just really, like you said, put it in front of as many developers as you can.
Absolutely. And also, at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter the size of the property. You never know which buyer has different goals. They all have various goals and are looking for different sizes. Like
Mhm.
some developers focus on community solar, some 1,000 acres plus, some look mid-range, like you were saying. And earlier, you had also mentioned that this kite-looking parcel might be an interesting option for community at some point too, for community solar. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so the backup plan with the developer is if we don't end up tying something into the big transmission line, we could create a community solar project on the parcels in blue that would feed into that subdivision where my kite-shaped yellow parcel is, because that is all like 40-acre parcels in a nice neighborhood. And it would be an interesting way to create power for that subdivision because it's 104 parcels. Um, I think there's probably less than 25 homes in the subdivision, but it's something that they had discussed as a backup option. So I love that they have creative thinking and are trying to come up with different solutions.
Absolutely.